Hey, Dom here, talking about a huge topic for me today, which is quitting drinking. If you know me well, you know that I used to love to drink, and it was a big part of my life, and it's no longer a part of my life, and everything has changed. It's the biggest life-changing thing that I've ever done, and I want to share my journey to that. Not because I think I have the way, or necessarily because what I did will work for you, but it could, or bits and pieces of it could. I find that I get inspiration taking little things that work for people and blending them into my daily growth map. And I think it's also important to let folks who don't know me know that I'm not in any capacity trying to sell any sort of expensive coaching program. I've involved myself in a lot of those coaching programs for better or for worse. Some of them helped, some of them didn't. This is purely me sharing the tools that I either created or have found and used in order to get alcohol the fuck out of my life. And it is a vulnerable video, which I've had second thoughts of doing because of judgment and, oh my God, what if, people at work see this? And you know what, I don't think that's real. I think that's just a story that I tell myself. And the truth is that I've always had so much power at work. And that was one of the things that continued to enable me handicapping myself in other areas of my life with alcohol, was that I was doing great at work. I was continually getting high positives. My career continued to develop. I continued to have great ideas. And so I thought, well, there's nothing the matter. I'm doing great. And it was really easy to lie to myself, time in and time out, that one vector of being successful in my career was the actual determinant as to whether my life was going well or not. And so if that resonates with you, then maybe some of this other stuff will resonate with you too. But the three vectors that I'm going to talk about today are the logical mind, the emotional mind, and then the spiritual mind. And I really believe that it takes a combination of all three of those in order to conquer an addiction. And there's a spectrum of different addictions. Specifically, we're just talking about alcohol today. This could translate into other ones, but there's a spectrum of how deep your alcoholism is. For me, I was beyond a casual drinker. I was drinking for the most part every night. And when I would drink, it would lead me to doing other things that I didn't like doing, like not working out, smoking cigarettes often. Never smoked a cigarette if I wasn't drinking. Somehow I encapsulated that addiction inside the other addiction, and I know that that's actually quite common. So breathing was not as easy as one would like, and eating like crap. Ordering 3 calzones at night because I thought I couldn't pick my mind as to which flavor I want, so it was okay to eat all 3. And where did that land me? I made it up to 275 pounds. That's big boy status. It's not healthy. I had very high blood pressure. My A1Cs were slowly creeping up. My mom has type 2 diabetes. You do not want type 2 diabetes. If you can avoid getting something like that, at all costs, you should. And now, after quitting drinking completely, and I've experimented with the moderation piece and how to introduce it into my life in a controlled manner. And for me, just no drinking is the right answer. Now, everybody could have slightly different, decisions on that, but this is primarily for people who want zero alcohol in their life. And now I'm under 200 pounds. I feel absolutely fantastic. I wake up clear-headed. I have a spiritual meditation practice that gives me more power than I ever thought I could have. My career is blossoming beyond where I thought I was doing good before. And what dawned on me is that my life on alcohol was just sustainable, at best. Sometimes I think it probably wasn't even that. But it was what I would call sustainable. And that sounds like a totally fine thing, because we think of like the green environmental practices, and what are we aiming for? We're aiming for sustainability. And in Cradle to Cradle, there's a great line where the authors say, but if I were to ask you, how is your relationship with your partner? And you were to respond, oh, it's sustainable. Oh, look at that. Uh, you would, that would be I would say, oh, only sustainable. That's like, well, I'm so sorry. What's going on? How can you fix that? And what we want is we want thriving. And as far as I'm concerned, it's impossible to have a life that's thriving while there's a poison that's involved in it. And so let me get into how I approach this. And for context, I have approached drinking and quitting drinking many, many times. I started drinking when I was 15, maybe 14, and it gave me this whirlwind of liquid confidence where I could get out of my head and I could flirt with older girls at parties, and I thought I was just the shit and I was on top of the world. I have no idea what I really looked like. In high school, I was, I don't even know how to describe myself in high school, but I'm sure some other people know how to describe myself. But I had a great time. We'll put it that way, and that habit carried on, and I never let it get in the way of work. I would actually find some of my favorite times were working for endless hours in a bar, just nursing a beer on the weekends. And so I thought, well, it helps my creativity. Man, the level of creativity that I have now is through the fucking roof. Sometimes it's hard to turn off. But the main thing that I realized was I had to change my mindset. And I didn't even know that this was what I had to set out to do. I thought quitting drinking was about having control. Complete control. And it's not, because I always thought of not drinking as taking something away from me. And now I realize I get so much from not drinking. So my mindset through the work I've done has shifted from I have to not drink to I get to not drink. And that mindset has actually translated into other aspects of my life too. At this point, when we get into the spiritual mind, and I'm not here to pitch anybody on any sort of religion or spirituality or anything like that. I actually tried AA, and one of the main reasons it didn't work for me was because of the whole God piece, because I very much am allergic to religion. So when I talk about the spiritual mind, please understand that it's coming from a person who's very cautious of that. But now in the spiritual mind, this notion of I am a soul in a body, and I get to go out into this world and do anything I want to satisfy my soul. I get to do that. It changes the entire mindset versus I have to get in shape. I have to lead this team. I have to get this impact. I have to take care of my mom. Everything changes when you are able to actually emotionally shift from I have to I get to. Now, let's take a step back into the logical mind, because that's where all of this starts. And I know that what I'm saying probably resonates logically. Sure, Dom. I can make that. I understand that shift. But how do I do it? And so there were several pieces and resources that helped build evidence in the logical mind for me. The first one was Alex Becker's great video on why he gave up alcohol. If you don't follow Alex Becker, the millionaire, marketer, entrepreneur, and crypto guy who is insanely polarizing, and a lot of people hate him because he's so obnoxious, but he's also entertaining and incredibly smart. I will link the video and also a short excerpt, but he explains it very well from a logical perspective, why drinking is not a necessary part of life to have fun, that you're actually not really having fun when you're drinking. You're actually slowing yourself, dumbing yourself down just so you can sit around the table with the same group of people that you're actually probably not that interested in anyway, which is why you need to drink. And how when you quit drinking, it unlocks this whole world of new activities and things that you didn't even think that you would do. And I'll get into my post-drinking life in a minute too. So that was one resource. The second resource, which was very scientific and an incredible download of information, was Andrew Huberman's The Real Effect of Alcohol. And it becomes very clear that alcohol is a toxin and a poison, and it gets in your blood. But even knowing that, I continued to drink for a while. Even knowing that alcohol was penetrating my cells and doing God knows what to it, I continued to drink. So the next part is really around the emotional mind. And the emotional mind is all about feelings. And specifically for men, we have a really hard time dealing with feelings. But the feelings are incredibly important. And the feelings are actually the secret to programming our subconscious mind into working with our conscious mind and creating the reality. I know that sounds a bit wonky and energy worker-ish, but Neville Goddard wrote this really amazing 32-page book on manifestation. And you can believe it or not, whatever resonates, but his words are crisp and clear, and I highly recommend reading it. It's called Feeling is the Secret. And he basically explains that the way that you create your reality is between your subconscious and your conscious mind essentially being married to each other and creating reality. And the way that you program your subconscious mind is by impregnating it with a feeling. And so if you can feel deeply a certain way, the sensations, right before you go to sleep, you can use sleep as a way to build your reality. That very simple mechanism was a complete and total wake up for me. That was actually the aha moment. Sunday morning before Thanksgiving 2024, I sat up in bed. I had read that book probably 4 months, 5 months before. I was drinking, I was sitting in bed, I was drinking a White Claw, I was about to go to a bar, and I realized, fuck, I drink so that I can change my feelings. But when I drink, my feelings are all over the place. Sometimes they're really excited. Sometimes they are very angry. Sometimes they're sad. That must mean my subconscious is really, really fucking confused. And if my subconscious is confused and I'm not really aware of that, guess what else is confused? my conscious mind, which means my reality is confused. And I literally laughed out loud. And I thought, God, I get it. I get why I drink. And I continued to drink that day, and I observed how fucking wonky my feelings were. And that night, I woke up around 3 a.m, and I just realized I can no longer drink. If I am a creator of my own reality, I can no longer drink. And I built a small program that I call the Daily Growth Map. It's a framework that I put around this specifically to help me improve my manifestation skills. And I call it manifestation for action-oriented people who don't necessarily care for all the spiritual woo-woo. And that's called the Daily Growth Map. And I'll link that too. That's a free program that you can use. And it basically is looking at the outcome that you want to go. What do you want to achieve in life? It could be sobriety, it could be more love, it could be better in your career, attracting more money. What do you want to attract to your life? That's your outcome. Then you figure out, well, what are the characteristics of the being that is capable and deserving of attracting that outcome? And then what are the actions that being does? And if you can then close your eyes right before you go to sleep and feel that. You don't even really need to articulate it because feelings are incredibly hard to articulate. You just feel that. Day in, day out, you start to reprogram your subconscious and you start to become that person. And what naturally happens? You start to attract that. You are calling that in. And so this is a practice that I do on a regular basis that has really helped me. And so that's really the kind of the emotional mind. And that's giving yourself permission to feel. I'm going to say that again. Permission to feel, leaning into the feeling. Why do you feel this? How does this feel? Is this feeling aligned with my outcome, with my being? Or is this in contrast to that? Do I need to abandon these feelings and replace them with something else? Now, the third part of this is on the spiritual path and the spiritual mind. I tried to go to AA and I abandoned AA. I think AA is a fantastic group of people. Everybody who I've met in AA is lovely, but I didn't necessarily identify with a lot of them because they were talking about God. They were talking about not having control of their life and giving control of their life over to God. I didn't identify with the kind of down and out mindset of a lot of the members, unfortunately. And it felt to me like the life of sobriety that many of those folks led, which was beautiful, but it was still all about alcohol. And then you have this situation where it's like, your life is all about drinking if you're drinking. And if you're sober, your life is also all about drinking because you're not drinking. And I didn't want that. I just wanted alcohol to not be part of my life. And I found myself not resonating with God because of my upbringing in Colorado Springs, which is a very conservative, fundamental, right-wing, focus on the family type of version of God. And so I rejected God at a very early age. And then it wasn't until I found myself in Costa Rica curious about plant medicine. Now, I had done a lot of psychedelics in my life, recreationally, LSD, MXE, ketamine, mushrooms, you name it, other than meth and heroin, I've probably done it. And, but all recreationally. And I was very curious about ayahuasca, mainly because I had started listening to a guy named Aubrey Marcus, and had really been turned on to the possibility that there was more, there was a spirit realm. And I very carefully found a shaman in Costa Rica who I did a one-on-one ceremony with. I really wanted to not go to one of these glitzy, Instagrammy places that just blasts you off and is just willing to take your money. And so I can talk more deeply about how I went about that. But I wanted to see why I was so drawn to alcohol and why I was willing to damage my life so much. And so I was aware at this point. I was, whether I knew it or not, I was spiritually aware. And there's some guy mowing a lawn. Hopefully you can still hear me. I was spiritually aware, but I didn't really know it. And so I sat with ayahuasca with the intention of just learning why. And I won't go into depth on my ayahuasca experience here. I will do another video for those people who are curious. This is 100% an endorsement for saying that plant medicine and ayahuasca could help some people. I really believe that. But this is not at all a recommendation that if you're drinking, you need to go and do plant medicine. At this point, I had actually forced myself to quit drinking for about a month before doing it. And I think that's really important. But I was forcing myself to not do it. And during this experience, I learned that I had a soul. I never knew that before. Not only did I learn that, I met my higher self and some version of God. And I learned so many spiritual principles that I can just no longer forget, that I continued to, that's so loud in the background. I can't think. That's the irony of doing this. The irony of God. Anyway, I'm gonna keep trying to power through it. So I learned that there was a God. And for me, it was a universal intelligence that had nothing to do with fear, it had everything to do with love. And after that, it was actually incredibly hard for me to drink. I did go back to drinking, and every time I would, the hangovers were worse and worse. I realized I was damaging my soul. I was taking energy away from my soul. I started to believe this kind of spooky theory that if you're very intoxicated, it allows, it weakens your cellular power, and it allows for dark energy that are entities that remain in this world after death, who are addicts themselves, to feed on that energy. Now, I know that sounds fucking batshit crazy to anybody who is not, walking down this path of learning about spirituality, and I totally recognize that. You don't have to believe that at all. I'm about 80% of the way there, but regardless, that experience with ayahuasca was the beginning of just a clue. And once you saw it, I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't forget it. And so that to me was what put me on a path of how do I integrate my soul into my life? And this is the spiritual mind. And that encouraged me to learn transcendental meditation. That encouraged me, and that, by the way, was the best $800 I think I've ever spent. I thought about it for years, knowing that Ray Dalio and Jerry Seinfeld did it, and I thought, what a racket. They're gonna give you a word for $800. I can just come up with a word, or I can just listen to Calm. Totally blew my mind. If you do the work, you can tune in to your brain. You can get your brain into theta waves. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this. He has wonderful meditations too. And you can really get in touch with yourself and slow yourself down. The other one is breath work. I never really got into Wim Hof. It felt to me like a drill sergeant yelling at me. I think he's amazing. He's changed many people's lives. Didn't resonate with me. I particularly like Awaken, the app by Lucas Mack. I find that him and his wife are incredibly gentle but powerful. And everything they do talks about being a creator and restoring and activating your power. And that really, really resonates with me. And so I'll put all of this stuff into kind of my little resources and hopefully cut out some of this handy dandy grass cutting noise behind me. But the TLDR here is, if your life feels like it could be better and alcohol is getting in the way, it can. If your life is in shambles because of alcohol, you may need to seek deeper help. And at that point, a group like AA or therapy or counseling is probably a very, very good first step. And so what I'm talking about here is not really a replacement. This is more so for people who maybe don't resonate with AA and don't need that type of help. Things are going good, but they know they could be better. Maybe you're doing damage to your body. Regardless, no matter what program or path you go, changing your mindset is the absolute most important thing to do. The way that you change your mindset is by activating your logical mind, your emotional mind, and your spiritual mind. Many different paths for doing that. But I found that my logical mind and my emotional mind didn't click into the puzzle pieces until my spiritual mind was engaged. The way that I activated my spiritual mind was through plant medicine, through ayahuasca, and then through the use of meditation and breath work. Then my emotional mind was ready to be tapped into, which is the most powerful part, and that is the manifestation practice that was outlined by Neville Goddard in Feeling is the Secret. And that is what the Daily Growth Map, which is a free download you can use for this, is. And then the logical mind plays in, and now you are actually more receptive to the logic of Andrew Huberman, which is alcohol is actually poison on a cellular level. And then you are also able to receive, like the Alex Becker, like life only gets more and more fun when you don't drink. And at that point, that's when you realize You are a soul in a human body in the third dimension, and you get to do this. And that life becomes so much more fun. And that once you're vibrating at that level, you meet so many new and different people, and you're calling them all into your life. And you can go and do things that are complete blast that you never thought you would do. Improv theater, vocal lessons, fighting lessons, running again, being in great physical shape, meeting new people romantically that you didn't think you had the courage to because you had to hide behind alcohol before. Life just literally unlocks. And if you're into business and entrepreneurship the way I am, getting that power and shifting that mindset, you will come up with so many new ideas. Prioritization will end up being your biggest problem. So, long video, super important topic for me. And I'll do some sort of like an AI summary blog too, because that'll make it easier to digest for some folks. All right, thank you. Shisharka.